My father looked at me, his arms crossed over his chest like a judge, and delivered the sentence. Apologize to my precious princess and her brat, or get out, I just said. Okay. By sunrise, I was gone, and so was the account paying their house, cars, and bills. What happened when every card got declined tore their world apart? For 3 years, Ariana, had been their silent banker and caretaker. I was 20, I was 28, an accountant, and meticulously organized, traits I should have used to build my own life instead of patching up theirs. It began subtly, chipping in for the electricity and Wi-Fi because Dad was pushing retirement and Jenna, my older sister, hadn't held a job in years. They called it temporary help, a phrase that, in hindsight, felt like the cruelest joke. Temporary help quickly metastasized into full financial dependency. I was covering the household groceries, the frequent Costco runs, the car insurance, and the monthly phone bill for Jenna. I paid for Milo's clothes, his biannual dentist visits, and the private tuition fees Jenna insisted upon. I even paid for the bunk bed in Milo's room and bought the streaming services so they could relax in the evening. There was no transparency. Every expense was an emergency, every request framed as a desperate need only I could meet. I didn't complain, not really. I convinced myself it was family, that this was simply what you did for the people you loved when they were down on their luck. But deep down, the resentment was a tight, cold knot in my stomach. The irony was suffocating. I was delaying paying down my own student loans and credit card debt. That money often went directly to cover their needs, leaving me financially sinking while they stayed comfortably moored. The whole precarious arrangement came crashing down over a vinyl record. Dad's collection was his only real prized possession, kept locked behind glass and labeled strictly, hands off. I came home late from a brutal 12-hour shift to find the cabinet door ajar. The air smelled of cheap plastic and harsh marker fumes. Milo, my 7-year-old nephew, was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the living room rug. He was surrounded by a graveyard of black discs, his legs dusted with glitter, and uncapped permanent markers in his hands. The entire floor was covered in Dad's priceless records, each one scribbled over with neon marker scribbles. The sight hit me with a physical force, a realization that nothing in this house, not even the irreplaceable, was safe from their carelessness. I didn't yell. My voice was dangerously calm when I asked Milo who gave him the markers. He pointed a marker-stained finger toward the kitchen, saying Jenna had given them to him and told him to stay busy while she was out. Jenna returned 30 minutes later, not with apologies for the destruction, but with immediate, volatile fury aimed entirely at me. She launched into a screaming tirade, claiming I had no right to question her son, claiming I had traumatized him. She completely ignored the dozens of ruined records. It was always about defending her lax parenting and never about taking responsibility. That was the moment Dad walked in. He surveyed the wreckage, the ruined collection he cherished, and then looked straight at me, as if I were the vandal. Jenna immediately burst into theatrical tears, saying I had made Milo cry and was always judging her. Dad did not hesitate. He crossed his arms and told me I needed to apologize to Jenna and Milo. I waited. I genuinely thought this was a ridiculous joke, a clumsy attempt at dark humor. But his face remained hard, humorless. He doubled down, claiming I was always overstepping boundaries. The unfairness was a punch to the gut. I asked him, straight up, if he was serious. He stared back and made the demand concrete. Either you apologize, or you leave. 3 years of sacrifices, 3 years of footing the bills, canceling my own life plans, and putting my debt on hold for them. And this was my reward, an ultimatum based on a brazen lie and a destroyed heirloom. It was not a choice. It was a liberation. I met his gaze, the cold knot in my stomach finally hardening into steel. I said the word he was waiting for, the word that would change everything. Okay. The shock of my father's unjust ultimatum shattered my remaining hope for family respect. I had accepted the sentence, and now I had to execute the plan, which was already forming in my mind with frightening clarity. The house was silent when I went upstairs. Jenna had taken Milo to the backyard to distract him, still sobbing dramatically about her perceived victimization. Dad was in his den, likely brooding over his ruined records, still conveniently blaming me. I did not waste time on confrontation or a goodbye note. I packed only the essentials: my laptop, my legal documents, and 3 changes of clothes. Everything else, the furniture I bought, the cookware, the countless bags of groceries, I left behind. They could have their clutter. I was taking back my resources. I sat at the kitchen island, firing up my laptop. My hands were steady, my mind cold and clinical. This was not an emotional outburst, this was an accounting audit. Every service they relied on, every convenience they took for granted, existed because I had created a financial ecosystem around them. First, the phone plan. It was in my name, a family share plan that Jenna, Dad, and I used. I removed Dad and Jenna as authorized users and requested an immediate cancellation of their phone lines. By morning, Jenna's phone would be a useless brick without data or long-distance calling capability. Next, the utilities. The water bill and the electric bill were both auto, paid from my primary checking account, often months behind because I was managing their cash flow. I logged into each provider's portal. I changed the mailing address to a post office box and canceled the automatic payments. I knew they did not have the login information or the current amount due. They would have to start from zero. Then came the streaming services and subscriptions: Netflix, Amazon Prime, the Wi-Fi. I systematically changed the passwords and deleted their profiles. It was petty, perhaps, but those little luxuries were the daily threads of normalcy they were about to lose. The last service I touched was the car insurance payment. The renewal was due in 2 days, also set to auto draft from my bank. I canceled that payment, too. I knew Jenna needed that car, but the responsibility was not mine anymore. I logged out, scrubbed my browsing history, and backed up my most important files. I was efficient, precise, and detached, like an accountant closing a complicated, overdrawn account. I had moved out once before, to college, but this felt different. Then I was leaving home. Now, I was extracting myself from a parasitic host. The entire process took less than an hour. I looked around the kitchen, seeing the expensive blender I had bought for Jenna's smoothie kick, the new dining chairs I paid for. Not a single item felt worth fighting for. They wanted me out because I wouldn't bow to their manipulation. Fine. I was leaving, but I was not leaving their lives intact. I grabbed my bag, slipped out the back door quietly, and walked down the driveway without looking back at the house that had drained me for so long. As the sun began to rise over the neighborhood, casting long, peaceful shadows, I got into my car. The engine started, a reassuring roar of independence. I was driving away from a 3-year financial trap. I was free, and by the time they realized what I had done, the only thing they would hear was silence. I knew the frantic, angry contact would begin soon, but I had prepared for that, too. I had already muted them all. Within 48 hours of my departure, the family's life support system began to flatline. Bringing frantic, angry contact, I was settled into a temporary sublet, the silence of the new place feeling like an unfamiliar, luxurious blanket. The peace didn't last long. My phone, still muted, started lighting up like a distressed Christmas tree. Jenna was the first to realize the consequences. The phone service cancellation hit her hard. She couldn't watch her streaming videos or navigate to the store using data. The first round of messages were confused, then rapidly turned furious. "What the hell did you do to the phone?" one text demanded. "Milo can't watch his cartoons. You need to grow up and come home and fix this," said a voicemail, attempting to frame me as the child in this equation. I listened to a few, hearing the entitlement dripping from every word, and felt a surge of cold satisfaction. They were still blaming me, but now they were powerless. I didn't just pay their bills, I had been their manager. They had outsourced their entire lives to me. They didn't have the current utility login information. They didn't know which account paid the monthly car tags, and they certainly didn't remember when the last insurance payment was due. Anytime life required a shred of organization, they simply said, "Ariana will take care of it." Now, Ariana was gone. The first serious blow landed at the end of the week. Dad called me twice in a panic, not bothering with a greeting. He immediately launched into a rambling lecture about responsibility and how cruel I was being. I interrupted him, asking, "Do you want me to apologize again, Dad?" He hung up instantly. I knew what had happened. The electric bill I canceled was overdue, and the power was shut off. The following day, Jenna called, truly hysterical this time. Her voice was thick with tears and indignation. "My car is gone!" It was towed from the grocery store lot. "You abandoned us!" The car insurance payment I canceled had lapsed. She screamed that Milo was scared because they had to walk home in the dark from the impound lot. She never once accepted that the lapse was due to her own financial neglect, only my abandonment. I let that call go straight to voicemail. Hearing the brittle tone of her denial crack under the weight of reality, every week brought a new crisis. The fee cancellation meant no more online job searching for Jenna. Not that she was doing much, anyway, and no more homework research for Milo. The refrigerator broke, and they realized no one was there to schedule the repair service or handle the deductible. Milo's school lunch account ran dry. These were not just inconveniences, they were existential threats to their comfortable, subsidized existence. I started to feel a strange mix of vindication and anxiety. The empowerment of severing those ties was real, a feeling of control I hadn't known for years. But the guilt whispered, was this too extreme? Was I becoming as cruel as they were manipulative? I quickly countered the thought. Their crisis was a direct result of their choices and their refusal of basic respect. Their pain was merely their consequences. They were experiencing the harsh reality of living within their actual means, something I had shielded them from for too long. But the silence from the rest of the extended family worried me. I knew Jenna would not keep this to herself. As the reality of their self-inflicted crisis sank in, the family turned to social manipulation, forcing me to choose between remaining silent and fighting back. The utilities were gone, the car was towed, and their financial world was crumbling. Yet their immediate response was to control the narrative. Jenna started reaching out to the extended relatives, weaving a familiar web of lies. She spun a victim narrative where I had stormed off in a rage after a small argument and had abandoned family in a time of need. She conveniently left out the detail about the ruined vinyl and the ultimatum. The messages started filtering through my phone. Texts from cousins and aunts, some confused, some siding immediately with Jenna's dramatic version of events. "Ariana, are you really okay?" one cousin asked. Another, Dad's sister, Aunt Carol, texted, "Your sister is devastated. You need to call your father." My stomach twisted with frustration. Their emotional performance was always better than my pragmatic truth. If I didn't defend myself, I would be exiled from the entire family based on a lie. There was one person I knew would not fall for Jenna's performance. Aunt Colleen Hayes, my mother's sister. Colleen was a retired auditor, pragmatic to a fault, and deeply skeptical of drama. She lived 3 states away and rarely involved herself in local squabbles, but she valued honesty above all else. I needed a judge, not a therapist. I decided to call her. The conversation was difficult because I had to unpack 3 years of accumulated humiliation and resentment. I laid out the narrative in chronological order, starting with the small electricity bill help that turned into full-time financial support. I explained how the expenses kept piling up and how my self-respect was eroded with every unacknowledged check. Finally, I told her about the vinyl incident, the ridiculous lie Jenna manufactured, and Dad's heartless ultimatum. Colleen listened silently, letting me talk for a full 20 minutes. When I finished, the first thing she asked was not about feelings, but about facts. "Did you really cover all that for them, Ariana?" That question was my cue. I told her I had receipts because of course I did. I was an accountant, and I had been meticulously documenting every payment, perhaps subconsciously preparing for this exact moment of reckoning. I spent the next hour sending her screenshots, utility payments, grocery credit card bills, bank transfers for school fees, and the text messages from Jenna begging for cash. I included the last utility bill I paid, showing the huge balance. I hit send and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. I had exposed myself and my shame to the one person whose judgment I truly feared. The silence on her end was prolonged. When she finally replied, it was through text, 3 simple, heavy words that validated 3 years of quiet suffering. "I believe you." It was an intense moment of vulnerability and relief. I was no longer fighting alone against a web of lies. I had objective validation from the highest moral authority in the family. Colleen did not promise to fight my battle, but by simply believing me, she armed me. I knew that Jenna and Dad had just gained a powerful, principled enemy, one who dealt not in tears or shouting, but in cold, hard numbers. The tide of family opinion had not fully turned yet, but the counter-offensive had officially begun. With Colleen now armed with the financial facts, the consequences for Dad and Jenna moved from simple financial pain to crushing social isolation. Colleen, true to her nature, didn't create drama. She simply organized a massive family summer cruise, a 10-day trip to Alaska, and ensured Dad, Jenna, and Milo were explicitly excluded. The news circulated quickly through the family group chat, a group Jenna had removed me from weeks ago. My cousin Erica, bless her, became my eyes and ears. She texted me asking, "Did you hear about the cruise?" When I asked who was organizing it, she replied, "Colleen." And no, your dad and Jenna aren't on the list. She told everyone certain people are not welcome this time around. My hands actually trembled as I read the text. It was a surgical, public shaming that surpassed anything I could have engineered myself. It wasn't just losing money. They were losing face, losing their place in the family structure, and all without Colleen ever having to raise her voice. 2 days later, Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't given him my new address, a fact that spiked my anger. He stood awkwardly in the hallway, holding a six-pack of craft beer like it was a peace offering capable of smoothing over 3 years of financial abuse and a lifetime of disrespect. I didn't invite him inside. He stammered through an attempt at reconciliation, his eyes darting around the hallway. "This whole thing is a misunderstanding, Ariana. It's gone too far," he mumbled. "Colleen is just overreacting because she's too sensitive to family drama." He mentioned the cruise, finally getting to the point. "If you could just clear things up with her, maybe she'd let us go on the trip." Us go on the trip. The sheer audacity made me laugh, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. He wanted me to intervene, to save his vacation and his social standing, without addressing the fact that he kicked me out over a scribble on a record. I simply stared at him, saying nothing. The silence was heavy, forcing him to stand in his own shame. He muttered something about Jenna not meaning to make things worse and that Milo missed me. A classic manipulation tactic. He left 5 minutes later, defeated by my silence. The next wave came from Jenna. When I didn't answer her calls, she left a voicemail that was a frantic masterpiece of deflection. She switched seamlessly between a fake apology and aggressive blame, accusing me of turning the whole family against her and acting like a stranger. "You are the one tearing this family apart, Ariana," she cried, never acknowledging the 3 years I spent holding it together. I had spent years being their safety net, the fixer, the one they leaned on for every inconvenience. The second I needed a sliver of respect, they threw me out. Now, they were beginning to feel the painful vacuum I left behind. But the most alarming development came from an unexpected source. Uncle Mark Jensen, my cousin Erica's father, who was a quiet, highly respected certified public accountant. I hadn't heard from him in months when he suddenly texted me, "Call me when you can. It's important." When I called, Mark skipped the pleasantries. "Ariana," he said, his voice low and serious, "did Jenna or David ever use your information for their tax returns?" I didn't have to think. The memory of Jenna talking me into letting her claim some child tax credits a couple of years back flashed through my mind. She said it would help the whole household, that it was temporary, and I, naive and exhausted from working 2 jobs, had agreed. I never saw the money, and they kept asking for more. "Yes," I whispered. Mark explained that a friend of his in tax compliance had flagged some irregular filings connected to them, inconsistent income, the wrong dependents being claimed, and my name being tied to benefits I didn't qualify for. He wasn't warning me to scare me. He was already working to clear my name from the mess. "They knew exactly what they were doing, Ariana," he finished. That confirmation, that my financial enabling wasn't just neglect but outright criminal exploitation, locked the last door on my lingering doubt. The time for mere consequences was over. Now, it was about justice. The cruise planning night at Aunt Colleen's house became the impromptu court where all the hidden truths would be revealed. I arrived early, feeling a nervous tension mix with deep vindication. Colleen gave me a reassuring smile, knowing exactly what was about to happen. We were mid-discussion about cabin pairings when the front door burst open. Jenna marched in, Dad trailing awkwardly behind her. They hadn't been invited, but their desperation to reclaim their social standing was palpable. Jenna immediately began shouting, demanding to know why they were being excluded. "This is ridiculous, Colleen," Jenna shrieked, tears already forming. "Ariana has turned the whole family against us with her tantrums. It is wrong to punish Milo for grown-up drama." Dad stood silently, letting Jenna lead the charge, his presence a tacit endorsement of her manipulative fury. Colleen, ever the auditor, didn't engage with the emotional theatrics. She waited until the room fell dead quiet, then spoke, her voice calm and devastatingly clear. "Jenna, David," she said, "can you repay Ariana for everything she paid for the last 3 years?" The question stopped Jenna mid-sob. The room went silent. Every relative watching the confrontation unfold. Jenna immediately tried to deflect, stammering, "This isn't about money, Colleen. This is about family and grudges." Dad mumbled something similar, completely missing the point. That was the cue for Uncle Mark Jensen. For the first time that night, the quiet CPA stood up. He walked slowly to the coffee table and placed a small stack of printed financial statements on display. It was a neat compilation: utilities, groceries, phone bills, subscriptions, and the detailed receipts showing thousands of dollars paid, all documented under my name. He didn't have to say a word. The paper spoke for him. Colleen looked directly at Dad and Jenna. "You used Ariana, you lied about it, and when she walked away, you tried to make her the villain," she stated plainly. Her voice tightened slightly. "You are officially uninvited. Not because of a grudge, but because you acted dishonestly. Until you pay back what you took and clear Ariana's name of the tax mess Mark uncovered, you are not welcome on this cruise or in my home." Jenna's face crumpled from fake tears into genuine, furious rage. She started yelling accusations at me, at Colleen, at the entire room, demanding loyalty. Dad, however, simply turned and walked out the door. His shoulders slumped in total defeat. No one followed them. That night, my phone flooded again with messages. They weren't demands for service, but desperate pleas. Jenna alternated between raw apologies and bitter accusations, asking why I had to involve the family. Dad simply asked to talk. I even got a short, sad voice message from Milo saying he missed me. I felt a surge of pity, but it was quickly quenched by the memory of the vinyl, the tax fraud, and the cruel ultimatum. The vindication was complete. They thought the worst thing I could do was walk away, but the worst thing I had done was stop coming back. Defeated but not yet willing to concede, Dad and Jenna launched a desperate campaign to salvage their shredded reputation after the public humiliation at Colleen's house. They went silent for a few days, regrouping like wounded animals, before Jenna returned to the only weapon she knew: spin. I heard from Erica that Jenna had begun texting family members individually, trying to clear the air. She spun the record story as an exaggeration, minimized my financial contributions as small occasional help, and hinted darkly that I might be going through some kind of breakdown, which caused me to lash out. She was trying to shift the blame to my mental stability. But this time, it didn't work. The family had seen the evidence. Colleen had quietly shared the key documents and receipts with the handful of relatives she trusted most, and Mark had confirmed the serious nature of the tax irregularities. When Jenna tried her usual sob story routine, people weren't buying it. Most didn't respond at all. A few cousins actually blocked her, unwilling to deal with the toxicity. Dad tried to call Colleen himself to smooth things over, but she didn't answer. Mark refused to return their calls as well, focusing only on the legal work required to clear my name. They were cornered not by drama, but by facts and silence. Then came the final, physical blow of exclusion. Colleen sent out the official cruise itinerary. Flights, cabins, room pairings, all finalized. I was listed in a spacious suite with Erica and her husband, a symbolic embrace into a new, healthier family unit. At the bottom, a note read, "All arrangements are final. No changes." Jenna's name was not on the list. Neither was Dad's. The public declaration of their exile was complete. That same evening, Jenna texted me, her composure completely gone. "You really think this is fair?" she wrote. "Milo was looking forward to it. He did nothing to you." A moment later, a text from Dad arrived. "Whatever grudge you're holding, it's gone too far. You need to stop this." That was the moment I knew they still didn't understand. After everything, the years of exploitation, the lies, the tax fraud, and the attempted shaming, they still believed they were owed the vacation, the family, and my effort. They saw my reaction as a tantrum, not the establishment of a boundary. I replied for the first time in weeks. I typed a single word, the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. "Goodbye." Then I blocked both their numbers, ending the conversation, the conflict, and the connection for good. The next morning, I received a Venmo notification. Jenna had tried to send me $25. $5. I stared at the screen, almost laughing at the ridiculousness of it. Was this a twisted peace offering? A down payment on 3 years of debt? Or one last desperate attempt to start a conversation? Whatever the reason, I selected the decline button instantly. I didn't need their money. I never did. I just needed my life back, and now I finally had it. The morning of the cruise marked the start of a new, free life. I woke up to a profound silence, a quiet I hadn't realized I was missing for years. No booming television, no slamming doors, no stress. Just the stillness of my own space. My phone buzzed faintly on the nightstand. A new email. The subject line was simply, "You win." I didn't open it. The victory was already secured. I didn't need their concession. I packed my bag slowly, savoring the stillness and the light streaming through my window. My flight to the port city was scheduled for mid-morning. Morning. Just as I zipped my suitcase shut, there was a tentative, soft knock at my apartment door. 2 taps, hesitant and unsure. I froze. I hadn't given them the address, but somehow they had found the temporary sublet. My phone buzzed again with an unknown number. "We're outside. Please talk to us." Just 5 minutes. I walked quietly to the upstairs window and looked down. Dad and Jenna stood on the porch, looking small and defeated. Milo was sitting in the back seat of the car, kicking his legs against the door panel, a silent witness to their desperation. I stood there, watching them exist in the space that no longer concerned me, observing their last, futile attempt to drag me back. Then, I simply turned away from the window. By the time I arrived at the airport terminal, the atmosphere had completely shifted. It was loud, chaotic, and cheerful. Erica ran up and hugged me fiercely. Colleen, looking completely serene, handed me a folder containing my itinerary and a shiny cruise badge with my name printed clean across it. "You made the right call," she said, giving me a knowing wink. As we boarded the ship, someone mentioned Jenna had tried one last time to call other family members, weeping about the injustice and how Milo was paying the price. But this time, no one took the bait. The cousins who once backed her up were quiet. They had seen the evidence. Facts had done the damage Jenna couldn't spin her way out of. I stood on the deck with a cool drink in hand as the massive ship slowly pulled away from the dock. I watched the shoreline disappear, physically and symbolically creating distance. I thought about the thousands of dollars and the years of emotional energy I had spent carrying them. I realized they never needed my money, they only needed my compliance. I didn't open the email. I didn't unblock their numbers. I simply let the distance grow until the land was a faint smudge on the horizon. This cruise wasn't just a vacation, it was proof that I could live without them, and that they, stripped of their support, could not function without me. As the ship finally sailed into the vast, open ocean, I inhaled deeply and exhaled years of resentment. The emotional arc was complete. I wasn't just sailing toward Alaska, I was sailing toward myself. Total WORTONT, all parts, 6,400 words,